When I got on the phone with my dad later on, around 2003, I told him about my new theory that kneeling too much had messed up my knee. He didn't disagree. He listened while I went on and on about how I got totally lied to by him and Mom in that church school. It was the first time I had stood up to my dad, and the first time I told him the extent of his error in sending me to any religious school. I was calling him from the conference room of the Charles E. Stevens American Atheist Library and Archive, where I worked at the time. It was a very exhausting but rewarding phone call for me. I didn't give a damn how my dad felt about it. I highly recommend that every atheist who can call up your parents and let fly with your opinions on religion, especially if the religion you had was too harsh and if your parents were supportive of that religion, and if this particular conversation hasn't happened yet but was looming for years. Like a buzzard hovering over the situation, waiting for an end to the normal struggle at hand, waiting to land and engage the subjects involved, that conversation was my coming out to my father. I highly respected my dad for many years. Him sending me to Holy Ghost school slowly ruined that respect. I can never forgive him or my mother. Period. So why did I think it was football that hurt my knee and not all those hours of pointless kneeling? We played rough football with no pads or helmets or coaches or referees. When one of us took a hit, we took it quite hard. Much of our playing field had dead grass and hard dirt underneath. It was more of a playground field than a proper football field, of course. Holy Ghost School hadn't had an official school football team in years. During recess, we would have about 40 minutes to play, and that included playing football or cup ball or soccer or dodgeball, whichever we wanted usually. Football seemed to be the most popular with the boys. It was crazy-style football, with few actual rules being observed and tons of unnecessary roughness. I specifically remember getting nailed hard to the ground by Patrick and at least a few other guys, all in front of a group of female classmates. One girl, I couldn't tell who right away, said, "You guys are too rough. You're going to get hurt." Then some guy said, "Whoa, Joe, you really got smashed there. Dang, you suck." And then another guy on my team, I presume, said, "Hey, at least he can take it." I suddenly looked at myself and I was already standing and walking to go to the next play. There was only a little blood on my arms and I was covered with dirt. And I thought, hey, I can handle this. At that point, physical pain was just a mental concept to me. I guess I have Holy Ghost School to thank for that. I played to try to stay in the normal zone of popularity of school. Jimmy usually didn't play as he wasn't interested in getting tackled or hanging out with the popular kids. My buddies, though, Andy, Alex, John, Tony, and even Danny did. We played an amazing game, and I hastened to call it football. Our starting line on both sides was often as wide as the field itself. We thought that football is more enjoyable when there are 30 or 40 more players on the field for each team. The more the merrier. We let the younger grades play with us sometimes, just to get more receivers downrange. The quarterback would often have 8 or 9 receivers to choose from, and would sometimes take a full minute deciding after the ball was snapped. Really creative playing. At first I knew little about the game, but I learned a lot. Like how to take a tackle from a few big guys. I developed an effective way to bring down the biggest of players, too. Whenever the biggest guy in school would get the ball, and that would usually be Pat, I'd bring him down in my own way. Wasn't exactly legal. Pat was this big, burly Spanish guy who sort of wobbled when he ran. He ran fast, though, like a bull. He would see me on the other team and run towards me because I was the smallest guy on the field. I used this to my advantage, though. Not my size, but him targeting me. He'd come to me with one arm outstretched, pointing at me like a battering ram, ready to crush someone. I simply grabbed that outstretched arm at the wrist with both of my hands. I had long fingers, and still do, so I wrapped them all around one wrist, so that I was holding his wrist with both of my hands locked together like a vice. Then I simply dropped my body to the ground like a dead weight. Suddenly he had this dead weight he had to carry along with the ball in the other arm. He couldn't get my hands off his wrist by running and flailing around, and he couldn't use his other hand to push me away. He had to hold the ball with that hand. He'd only get another 2 or 3 yards down the field once I had him like this before he'd fall. Every single time he got the ball, he charged right for me, and every single time he did, I brought him down using this method He just ran until he couldn't run anymore, having to carry me around with one arm, while other guys on my team jumped on top of him. The only challenge to my method was the river of sweat that covered Pat and all of us after we made him work so hard. It made his arms slippery. I persevered, though, and got a little bit of respect from Pat and the upper clique for it, too. As the class of 1983, we were well known as the worst-behaved class for the entire 8 years we were there. At first, we didn't intend that, but as we became aware of that opinion, we figured that it's a good thing. It set us apart from the other grades every year. We had an hour-long music class as part of our regular class schedule. In 7th grade, we got a new music teacher, Miss Chatterley. She was an overweight, middle-aged woman with huge glasses and a soft tone. She looked odd and seemed weak, so we focused on her for punishment. Our reputation seemed to demand that we do things that were abusive. We were all fed up with the controlling ways of the nuns and priests and lay teachers we had so far, so any teacher who appeared weak would be in for a real problem with us. The very first day Miss Chatterley tried to give us a music class was also her last. At first we were cooperative, as some of us sang the obnoxious and overplayed Christian songs that we sang in church. Some of the students went right along with our new teacher and sang. Most of us didn't, though, and she noticed that. She stopped the class and tried to get us to become inspired to sing these miserable songs. But we had been singing those very songs for 7 years already, and we were plenty sick of them. There was other music, but the main focus of music classes at Holy Ghost School was to get their religion sung as loudly and by as many people as possible. The students needed to learn about music, so we were used to that. A couple hundred singing kids in a church makes a lot of Christians happy, especially clergy members. So we mostly sat there and talked. We cut up and goofed off. We stared out the window and bickered with our friends. Anything but what we were being told to do. Then Miss Chatterley made a fatal error. She asked us to behave. We were simply not used to being given a choice about anything, so asking us to do something was always an open-ended situation. We were learning how to be rebellious, albeit a little late in life, but we were there. We tested the limits of the teachers there and found that to be quite risky. So when a weak teacher asked us to behave, we took that as a sign that it was open season on the new teacher. We simply turned up the volume on what we were doing. It was 30 7th graders, all rowdy and out of control, when that nice and soft lady was trying to get us to sing religious songs of praise to God. There was no way Miss Chatterley was going to get away with that. We pushed and pushed and pushed for about 45 minutes until finally Miss Chatterley broke down and cried in front of us. She whined as she cried, saying things like, "Why won't you behave? What's gotten into you kids? Don't you know respect? I'm trying to give you this class, and you're making me feel terrible," unquote. Of course, that just fueled our actions more, and we continued to milk her for more of her tears. There was no more music, thankfully, and we had some amount of control over the situation. It was bliss. At the end of the hour-long class, we heard the bell over the intercom, and she let us all out of the class. She said goodbye through her tears, and we never heard from her again. The next day, we had another teacher giving our music class, and it was a nun. So it was back to the grind. We had our fun, and we were proud of ourselves. How dare she? What an insult it seemed. We were so used to being strong-armed into behaving, literally, and suddenly we were given some liberty. It was inevitable that we'd misuse it, and looking back, we were wrong. But the faculty was so much more wrong. We had all taken our own personal punishments from the nuns and priests and lay teachers there. We shared a small bond based on that, and it kept our class almost totally united against that school. We considered ourselves victims of an insane... Well, I did. I considered myself a victim of an insane school, and it was our duty to get some payback, I felt. Humiliation was always in the air at that school, so we felt no remorse if an adult got to share in that a bit. It was the least we would want to do, and the most we could get away with. We never got into trouble over that one incident. We just got a reputation. Near the end of 7th grade, on one typical class day, there was a special announcement over the intercom that went out to the whole school. It was May 13, 1981. Boys and girls, I need your attention. In a few moments, we'll be making a special announcement over the intercom, so we all need classes to stop what they're doing and stand by. So we stopped our work and got quiet. A few minutes later, there was another announcement. Boys and girls, teachers, staff, it is our sad duty to tell you that apparently the Pope has been shot. While in his Pope-mobile, as he was greeting crowds in Rome, someone shot him 4 times. We don't know how he's doing, but we're watching the news and praying. Teachers, please lead your classes in prayers for the Pope now. Well, I didn't know what to think. I was a little numb, but mostly I was a kid and didn't fully understand at the time. None of us really did, it seemed. Pope John Paul II was treated as somewhat special in my home because he was Polish. My father's whole family is Polish. We all had to be fans of him for this and other reasons. I never bought it, though. I figured that the supreme leader of the scam artists who were forcing me to live a giant lie could not be a good person at all. He was the kind liar. After a few minutes of reminding myself who this man was, I began to feel better. He survived the attack, and his would-be assassin was caught and imprisoned. And here's some information I found at a webpage from the BBC News. Mehmet Ali Agca was sentenced to life imprisonment in July 1981 for the shooting. The Pope later publicly forgave Agca and even visited him in prison. In June of 2000, with the agreement of the Pope himself, Agca was pardoned by the Italian president after serving 19 years. On his return to Turkey, he was rearrested and forced to serve the rest of his sentence for the killing of a Turkish journalist in 1979. He was released in January of 2006. So as of 2007, he was out and free and still alive. What a fate for the man who shot a pope. Not only that, but what an amazing level of scientific understanding of the human body we humans have, that the Pope was shot 4 times and survived, living another 24 years. It's too bad that modern thinking seemed only to be a hobby for this religious leader. Again, I felt better.